And I wanted to see, there we go. I want to see if does anyone have any questions about anything before we start with some of the stuff I'm going to cover tonight.
I had a quick question about graduation after Bedard. I'm not sure if you are aware, but I'm just trying to find out just some general information as far as like the ceremony date and the status of like our graduation applications. And I keep kind of getting tossed around a little bit. Is there like a particular contact or email address I can reach out to specifically?
Well, there's not a physical graduation again until November.
Yeah.
So November, I think 18th.
Yeah, I have family that's out of state and they're asking. I'm just trying to just see if there's anything available. I can give us some details just so for planning and things of that nature. So
yeah, the graduation will be November 18th at Sunnyvale Baptist Church, First Baptist Church in Sunnyvale. Unless they radically change what they've been doing the last like 30 years. That's where it's been. I don't know times. I'm assuming 7, but I don't know exactly. I don't know anything about any of those things, so I wouldn't. That's like an administration question, probably. I'm not sure why someone wouldn't be able to answer that question. I'm just going off, like I go to the graduation, so I just know like I get there like 6:30 or 6 or something like that. And you do have to order your cap and gown at a certain time, like by a certain time. So that would be, they usually will also send that email to like a personal email address, not necessarily your Moodle address. So they'll send you guys information to the personal email address that they have on file. That's typically what they do as well.
okay.
Like, so when you first applied to Amberton, you probably gave an email address. So whatever email address you gave them when you first applied, which I realized for some of you that was quite a while ago, that's the email address that they would use. I would suggest you double check me on that. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. The only other person that I know for sure that would know more than anybody would be Gina Termenstein in the dean's office.
Okay.
And you can find her information on the site, on the website. You can email her. And she'll get back to you really quickly. She's super helpful. Like right now, for everyone wanting to get your transcript right, you needed to have already, applied for graduation, basically, even though we're not physically walking. You're still graduating in August, but if you wanted to physically walk, you can do it in November, and people will do that. There will be people that will have graduated in the summer, but still will walk in November. That happens because we only have 2 different times a year that we do it, in the fall and the spring. So, yeah, I'm not sure. My assumption would be is other people at Amberton would know that information, but I don't, I wish I could be more help about logistics, but.
No, fair enough. I've just been kind of going back and forth with different emails and, email this email address and email that email address. And it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Give me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. I know it's November 18th. I know that for sure. Unless some weird thing happens, it'll be November 18th at Sunnyvale First Baptist Church. That's where it's been for quite a few years. I feel like it starts at 7 usually. I'm not gonna lie, it's hard to get there. Traffic's horrible to get there, but that's just kind of where we have it. So I would plan ahead. I don't know where you live, but definitely want to make sure that you plan ahead for that. And so typically what happens is the students will meet and congregate somewhere and then come in together, right? Just like a graduation. And a lot of times you'll walk you get to walk with someone you pick, like someone will walk with you as you get your diploma, and they'll sit with you and all those things. And then everyone else can just sit, in the auditorium there, can pretty much sit anywhere. And then a lot of people, do, go out to eat after and stuff like that. So that, you're kind of on your own after, once it's over, it's like a graduation. It's kind of the same.
Do you
same
know
thing.
if it's tickets required or if it's just?
I don't know any of that information. I don't
Okay.
think so, but I think I feel like there might, I don't know that there's ever been tickets, but with COVID, I don't know if there's been any changes. I have no idea about that.
Okay.
There's usually plenty of room, especially in the fall. It's usually not as big as the one in the spring typically. So it's usually not, and it's a pretty big auditorium. So
okay,
usually plenty of room. It usually lasts like an hour or so. It's not super long. Kind of depends on how many students that are walking, So
okay, fair enough.
It's just like a regular graduation you've ever been to in your whole life. It's basically the same thing, So, but I would call Gina, either call or text, or I'm sorry, email Gina Termenstein. I'll put her information in the chat.
Okay, I would do that. Thank you, Dr. Bedard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me find her real quick. Let me find her. Any other questions? I've gotten some emails from some people. I don't recognize anyone here that's emailed me, but I have gotten some emails about hours, just because I asked in the last email, like, hey, how's everyone doing? I'm typically going to ask that. I do want to, just check in with people about their hours. Is anyone in a place where they're kind of worried about it? I do know that we've had a couple people change sites. I think I've gotten all that information to the right places. Is anyone changing sites by any chance? Is anyone worried about their hours? Anything like that?
I'd sent you I guess a message just a little while ago. I am a little bit concerned just with my direct hours from my first practicum site. And I just took on a new role, like in my job, where I think my hours may count, but I'm not sure if it's too late to submit paperwork for a second site. Like I want to continue where I am for my other practicum site, but with just between COVID and summer and clients kind of going on vacation and stuff, I'm just a little bit concerned. Like I'll either be right at the 150 direct, or or scrambling. And if I cannot scramble and count my program therapist hours as well, that'd be great.
So you're doing, Stephanie, you're doing LPC?
Yes, I am.
Okay. You only need 100 direct.
Oh, okay.
So 300 total.
300 total, but only 100 direct. Oh,
100 direct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I should be just fine.
Yeah. And you get 80 hours from practicum 1 and practicum 2. You get 80 indirect hours from those two classes.
Yeah, I'm really good for my indirect. I
Okay.
don't think that's going to be an issue at all. Okay.
Okay.
Then you can ignore my message. So thank
No,
you.
that's no problem. And I apologize if you guys email me. I'm just being honest. I've got like 110 students and I'm getting like blasted with emails, and it is hard for me to work through them all. And so it does take me a little time to get to everybody, but I'm like tomorrow I'm going to dive into a bunch more. So I apologize if it takes me a little time to get to you. I'm getting there as quick as I can. You guys are usually pretty cool because y'all have been around a while, so you understand. But I've got one class in particular that's like their first class, and people get nervous. And
Yeah, no worries. And I mean, I really literally just Moodle messaged you probably 20 minutes ago. So
okay.
I don't expect like
Yeah.
And I don't even have a chance to read all of my emails every day. So thank you so much.
It's too hard. I get emails from like 4 different places, so it's
Yes,
a lot.
same. And
Everybody, you guys understand. It's just part of life. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bedard.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions about anything or concerns about hours or anything like that?
Hi, Dr. Bedard. This is Shanika. I did have a quick question about my hours, because most of my hours are direct hours, but we work alongside a supervisor. So we're actually working together. So how would I clock those hours? Because they're supervisor hours plus direct hours. They're like combined together for a 8-hour period. I hope that makes sense.
Are you like, what are you doing during those 8 hours?
During those 8 hours, we're working with clients, and our supervisors, what they have titled a staff advocate. So the staff advocate is a senior level, probably counselor, social worker, and we work alongside of them for that full 8 hours.
Okay. So what do you do? Like, what are you doing? Are you counseling? Are you taking notes? Are you doing administrative things? Like, what types of things are you doing?
Through the full 8, you're actually working with a client. So you're actually counseling different clients as they come in to you. So it's pretty much like a job. So you're working with us. You get a set list of clients that you work with for those 8 hours or 4 hours, whatever your shift is. Mine's is 8 hours, I guess, because I'm a older member of the team. So I'm working side by side with my staff advocate during her shift.
Okay.
And we're actually co-facilitating in group meetings, and then she kind of guides me through some other things I need to know. So the supervision is actually happening at the same time that we're working with a client. So after a client is done, we talk, hit the next client, we talk, and that's how that's been going.
But do you ever take notes? Do you ever write things down?
Oh yeah, all the time.
I mean, I would just, it sounds to me like you count those 8 hours for a little bit of everything, right?
Right, absolutely.
So it's direct and non-direct and supervisor time. So that's how I would do it. I mean, it sounds like you're doing a little bit of everything at the same time. So you have a ton of hours.
Right. So it's all happening at once. So I was just trying to figure out how to write all that out.
Yeah, I mean, as best as you can to section out time. Like, for example, during the 8 hours, I'm making all this up. During the 8 hours, I spend 5 hours of that really one-on-one with clients, maybe an hour of supervision, and 2 hours I'm writing things up combined. Like if I combined everything together, like if I do 20 minutes here and 10 minutes here and 15 minutes here, what does it look like if it's combined together? Let's say during a day. That's how I would do it, just to keep.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Instead of counting every little bitty increment, try to combine it into a day, and that's kind of what I would do. I tend to count. I'm actually doing a kind of hour counting right now because I'm getting licensed in a couple of states, and I tend to try to bunch things together as much as you can, just for organization's sake. So you kind of know, in other words, like if I spend 15 minutes watching a video today and I do that 4 more times, I'm not going to say 15 minutes every day. I'm going to say 4 days worth, I'm going to combine all that into one, one time frame, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
It's
I
going to
got
be
you.
1 hour this week I did that or something like that.
Gotcha.
Because because everything's in hours, right? Everything you do from here on, including your CEUs, is all hours. Like it's all, how many hours you bank. So does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Yeah. It's a good question. That's a super unique situation. Sounds like.
Hmm.
Yeah. Are you going to stay there?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to staying there. I'm already talking to one of the clinical directors and the advocacy director about coming on maybe part-time. The part-time pay is pretty good.
Mhm.
For LPCA, just to start out, I think they said the part-time pay was running about 40 or 50K part-time. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
that's good.
oh, I'm looking forward to staying and gonna go ahead and apply.
Yeah, and you'll get your hours fast.
Right.
And they have supervision there. They have LPCSs there.
LPCS is yes. The
Okay.
director of my site is a LPCS, and she just took on Baylor Hospital this week as a site for rape victims. So
Mhm.
yeah, we're about to get super busy. We're already doing Texas Presbyterian, Rockwall,
Yeah.
and then she just picked up Baylor. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good, man. You'll get your hours really fast. That's good.
yeah,
Good.
definitely.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? These are good questions. Okay. Here's what we're going to do tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got 9. Okay. So this is good. This will be good. We're going to spend some time. So I've got a couple of options that we'll do kind of at the beginning. And then I've got some private practice / like kind of counseling type information I'm going to cover for sure over the PowerPoints. And then we're also going to spend some time actually talking about telehealth at the end, probably kind of towards the end, and we'll do some group work there too. And I'll put you guys into breakout rooms and spend some time doing that. And I do have a little experience with telehealth over the last 2 years because that's all. I'm 100% telehealth now, so I've kind of started talking about it because it's something that's actually happening a lot more. So the first thing I wanted to try to do is kind of like what we did last time. If anybody has a case they want to talk about or a situation they want to talk about or anything like that, this would be it's an option to do that. We don't have to. I just want to make that available. So if anyone has anything that they would like to talk about, maybe they're stuck in some way or need some encouragement even or something. Anyone have anything they'd like to bring up today? All right. We're all good. Everybody's good. Last chance. Okay. Let's jump into some private practice stuff. Last class we did talk about insurance and we did talk about like how much you should charge and things like that. I'm going to go over some of that again, but I'm going to talk about it a little more in depth than I did last time. Since we have a smaller class here right now, if I'm going over something, you want to ask questions, just jump in and ask questions. You don't need to wait till I get done. I'm going to share my screen with everybody. Hopefully everyone can see that. Hang on a second, I'll make you guys a little bit. There we go, so I can see you. So last time when we talked about insurance paneling in terms of like getting on an insurance panel, I know for a fact I talked about, you know, how much you're reimbursed and things like that. We talked about all those things. And one of the things that I kind of hit on at kind of towards the end of that conversation is, you know, if you want to build your practice really quickly after you get licensed, if you want to jump on an insurance panel, that's a great way to build your practice quickly. And typically what happens is, you know, whatever marketing or networking you do individually, you're also getting it from the insurance company too. So if you're on 3 different panels, you're getting all that coverage from them. So basically anytime one of their clients logs into their site or calls them, or, you know, they're looking for a counselor, you'll be on their website, you'll be in their list, and they do it by specialty a lot of times. So you can list like several things, whatever you'd like to work on. And sometimes they'll call and say, hey, are you taking new clients? I've got a client that's looking for XYZ thing. But sometimes it's the clients themselves. They say, hey, I got you off my insurance. I think you'd be a good fit, blah, 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 whatever. So that in and of itself is a great thing because it helps you build your clients really quickly. It helps you not only kind of get your name out there, it will get clients to you. Now, if you're worried about, you know, the difference in how much you would make, then maybe you wouldn't want to go that way. You know, is there a reason why, you know, some people skip that whole process and just try to build it off of self-pay, and it takes a little bit longer, but people do it. It really just depends on a couple of things. The first thing is, like I said, speed at which you want to, you know, ramp up your practice. The second thing is, whenever you enter into an agreement with them, you sign a contract that's binding in terms of like how much you get reimbursed and whatever guidelines that particular insurance company has in terms of like how you do your practice and things like that. If you ever want to leave an insurance panel, which I actually just left Blue Cross Blue Shield as of 2 weeks ago, that process is actually pretty easy. It's pretty easy. It's hard to get in and very easy to get out for some reason. It's kind of weird. You just kind of, most all of the major insurance companies have like regional networking people that are in charge of like different regions. Like in Texas, like for Blue Cross Blue Shield, the lady I worked with was in Plano, I believe, and she served like certain parts of Texas, and I was part of that. So I just emailed back and forth with her. She's the one that kind of helped me get out of the program. She was actually there the whole time I was with Blue Cross, which was from 2014. Yeah, I was with them for 8 years. So she was actually with them the whole time. That person is also the person you would contact if you have issues or something comes up. There are some horror stories that float around out there about working with insurance companies. If I'm being honest, I didn't have a lot of really bad experiences. I had a couple of things that happened that I didn't like that were a little bit frustrating. One of those happens the last 3 or 4 years. It happened once a year, usually at the end of the year, where they do an audit. And if they audit and say that one of your clients actually wasn't covered, even though at the time they said they were covered and they paid you, they will get that money back and they'll just pull it back from you. Even though you might have checked and verified that they were covered, if they go back and audit and find out that they weren't covered, they pull that money back from you. And then you have to go to the client that they pull the money from. And if you saw that client a lot, like I had a client that I saw for like $900 worth of sessions, I had to then approach the client and say, hey, I'm so sorry to talk to you about this, but your insurance company basically said you weren't covered from this date to this date. And I'm going to need to get reimbursement for that because they just took that from me, basically. That's the only thing that I've ever had that I didn't like, that was frustrating to me. But that's all in the contract, and they're very specific about the contract. And it's a long contract, and just like any contract, you definitely want to read through it and ask any questions that they have. they tend to put the reimbursement rates towards the end of the contract. So you have to kind of read through everything before you get there. But they also lay that out pretty plain. And that insurance reimbursement rate that we would get, even though I have a PhD, I don't get reimbursed any differently than a master's level clinician. It kind of goes in tiers. So your counselors and MFTs kind of are in a tier, and then you jump up a tier if you're a psychologist. That's a different tier. If you're a psychiatrist or MD, that's another tier. So we're kind of at the bottom of the tiers. We get reimbursed the least for the most part. But even if Shanika was just talking about doing group work, you can get reimbursed if you do group work, and there's different reimbursement rates for groups that you can do. So there's multiple ways that you can use the insurance, which is really good. The other thing to think about are some reasons why some people skip it, in terms of like using it for couples or families, is that technically how you get reimbursed, and I'm jumping to the CPT coding here, in the diagnostic manual, how we diagnose. The way that insurance works in terms of reimbursement, if you have an individual that you're working with, this is not a big deal. You work with that individual and they have to have some type of diagnosis that is reimbursable. So not every diagnosis would get reimbursement. And so you do have to, assess if they have a diagnosis. 90-something% of the time, they're going to have something that can be diagnosed and that you can be reimbursed for. If you're working with a family or a couple, it's still only one individual that gets diagnosed. Wherein, as systems people, we really tend to think that the relationship should be diagnosed, but there's no diagnosis code for that. That's reimbursable. There are couple relational issue codes and family coding that you can use as a CPT code, but you will not get reimbursed for those. And so that's why some marriage and family therapists or people that work with families won't do insurance at all, because of the philosophical differences in how insurance works, because it's really based on medical billing. So the medical billing is how everything works with insurance, right? So there's a disorder, there's an identified patient that has a disorder, that's it. Not the relationship, not a conflict. You can't diagnose a conflict as something reimbursable, anything like that. So some of it's just philosophical in nature. And the couples that I've worked with, I tell them that very plainly. Hey, first of all, only one person can have a diagnosis, and that person has to be diagnosable. Like we have to, I don't just make it up. Like I don't just give you a diagnosis just to get reimbursed. A lot of times people do come from their own physician, let's say, with a diagnosis of some kind, and that's maybe why they're coming to you. That makes it a little bit easier. Like one of the areas I had been working in quite a bit in the last 3 years was ADHD. So most, like if not all of the ADHD referrals I got had already been diagnosed with ADHD. So that was obviously easy to grab that diagnosis and use that for reimbursement. So it's important to be aware that not everything that you're going to code as a diagnosis or a CPT code is reimbursable. So that's just important to be aware of too. Let me take a step back, because sometimes that comes across confusing, which it is a little confusing. Any question about that part at all? Okay, good. Okay, so the diagnostic coding that you would do is just like what you learned in the DSM class. You're using your DSM. They will take the DSM coding. This patient procedural code right here is a listing of, it's called ICD-10 now, that's what they use. or I'm sorry, the CPT coding, that ICD-10 is what they use for the DSM, but the CPT coding is a 8-number code that you would use along with the DSM code. The CPT code is, you have to have both in order to be reimbursed. There are clinicians that decide that, hey, I don't know if I want to be on a panel right away, but I will try to, let my clients treat me like an out-of-network provider and bill their own insurance. And that's taking a shot in the dark to see if that even works. The other thing that a lot of clinicians are doing now is getting on an insurance panel, but only, but not doing the billing themselves, giving the client what's called a super bill at the end of the month or end of the week or whatever, and then whatever paperwork they would need, and letting the client send off to get reimbursed themselves. In other words, the client would pay you whatever that rate is, like we talked about last week with, we'll use Blue Cross individual reimbursement rate is $87.11. I think it's $87.25 now. So Stephanie and I are working. Stephanie's my client. Every session she pays me $87.25. And let's say she says at the end of the month, I'll take my super bill, which gives all the detail about the sessions and the coding and the payment. And I give that to her. She uses that and she turns that into Blue Cross. And at some point within 3 to 6 weeks, she gets reimbursed for that month. She will specifically get reimbursed. A lot of clinicians are doing it this way because of exactly what I said a while ago. Because sometimes the insurance company is pulling money back, after they said they were good, and all of a sudden they said they weren't. I know several clinicians that are going this route. And that also takes a lot of the administrivia out of your hand. You're just charging for the session, that's it. And the client's responsible for billing. So you can do it that way too. Some people are getting reimbursed, like, for example, like the new like HSA cards and FSA cards. You can use those now. You used to not be able to use those as much. Now those are more widely used. Some people use those or need a receipt for that reimbursement sometimes. So the super bill does it for that as well. And so when we're talking about insurance, there's added administration costs, there's added administration time. But if you get a good practice software system, which we're going to talk about here in a second, it will do all of those things for you automatically. And it just allows you to not have to spend as much time doing that. Or if you work at a place, either a facility or a practice that have administrative help and they do all that billing for you, that's great too. So one way or another, someone has to file claims. And you will learn, if you decide to go the insurance route, you will learn a lot about insurance because you don't have a choice. And insurance has changed a bit since I first started. From my end, in terms of mental health, it hasn't changed drastically. But there's been some changes that have occurred for sure. And COVID has probably pushed some of those changes quicker, I think, in a lot of ways. So any other questions about insurance? Which again, I know we talked about some of this last time, but any other questions?
This may be a really dumb question. I'm trying to think now, but when it comes to like copays, is that part of that? Is that taken out of that reimbursement amount, or is that an added to?
So I'll just use Blue Cross since that's what we're talking about. The reimbursement of Blue Cross is $87.25, right?
Right.
Period. So
a period. So that would then be like if
that's copay, co-insurance, everything.
Got it. Okay. Awesome.
Yep. So if your copay, Stephanie, was 25,
then
you paid me the 87, they would give you back all your money less your $25 copay.
Gotcha. Okay.
The new thing is now co-insurance, which could potentially be on top of your copay, which could be a little bit more. And now what's happening is people have higher deductible plans, even in private plans. In other words, through a company that they work for, they're having more higher deductible plans. And those deductibles start over every fiscal year, which is in January, right? So when that starts over, well, for some companies, it's in October, some is in June, depending on the company. When the fiscal year starts over, the deductible starts over. And there's no reimbursement that would happen until that deductible is met. But all of that technically is on the shoulders of the client. I will be honest with you, what I've found is people do not understand how insurance works. They just pay their, whatever they pay every month, and then they use it when they have to, and then they don't understand how it works. And I mean, I actually had Angie where I used to work. Our admin was Angie, and I had her come up with basically a map of how insurance works from start to finish. And I used to give it to clients because, and my wife works in healthcare and she does a lot of billing and insurance stuff. And it's just amazing how many people just don't understand how it works. And it sounds like we should say, well, it's not rocket science, but it kind of is, depending on your policy. Everyone's policy is different. There's not, a lot of the plans have a lot of nuance to it, and it kind of depends on what you're using it for. So there will be a certain amount of like education that you will have to do with clients as well when you use insurance. The upside of it is you'll get reimbursed always. I mean, they don't, as long as you're following rules and doing the things you should, you get reimbursed. You can build your practice quickly. It's definitely a convenience for clients, because if they have insurance, they want to use it, which is great, and that's fine. The downside is you might not make as much as your self-pay rate, and you might have some admin headaches. And so you kind of have to balance all those things out when you're thinking through it. So any other insurance related kinds of questions at all?
Dr. Bedard, I got in a little late. I apologize. So you may have touched on it, but just my understanding of if you accept insurance at your practice, you're required to file a diagnosis with the company, correct?
Not with the company. The company should never know, what, right? Like that's a HIPAA compliance, right? So the company itself will not know what a diagnosis is. The client does get a filed diagnosis.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like if you're working with it, if you have insurance through your company, your policy is individual to you, not like a general policy with your company. So, there's privacy that obviously we follow that's confidential. So everything that you do with that client is confidential. Unless the client the client themselves can give out as much information as they want, but we as providers we don't do that. Unless I misunderstood your question. I could be jumping to, I might not have understood.
Yeah, well, I thought my impression of so if an insurance company is going to cover your mental health care, so let's say they're going to pay a certain amount and you only have to pay like a $30 copay. Mm-hmm. In order for them to do that, my understanding was they had to have like a valid reason. For example, like you had to say like, well, so-and-so has clinical depression, and so that's what I'm treating him for.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier. You have to have a diagnosis that's reimbursable.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah, there are diagnoses in the DSM that are not reimbursable via insurance. There's actually quite a few. All of the mood disorders would be, your learning disorders, your personality disorders. I think all of them are. Your most all things that affect adolescents and children. There's no, you don't get reimbursed. Like I was talking about earlier, you don't get reimbursed for like a relationship issue. That's not reimbursable, even though there's a code for that. And so you do have to have a diagnosis that's reimbursable, which means they have to fit the diagnosis too. Like you don't just like make it up, right? You know what I mean? So that is important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? A lot of this you won't have to worry about for a little while because you're going to be getting your license. You can't do it anyway until you have your license, but just have the information kind of in the back of your mind. Let's talk about practice management software, which there's a lot of them out there. I think I'll talk about some of them. Yeah, there's a lot of these out there. But they're not all great. There's a few that are pretty good, that are really good to help you with lots of different things. When I first started, I used the old pencil and big huge planner method, and now you don't have to do that anymore. You can I've got an app on my phone that I use with Simple Practice. You can go that route, and it's secure, it's HIPAA compliant. I do all my scheduling and calendar work there. It keeps everything in the cloud, so it does. You can you carry it with you wherever you go. You can always download anything from it at any point. It will give it to you in a format that you want. It can merge calendars in terms of like Google or iCal, but it does keep the information encrypted and confidential. Like if you merged Simple Practice with iCal, it'll just say like client or something as an appointment. It won't say the name or anything. So it does keep privacy that way. You can do all your intake paperwork. I've all mine's electronic. I just email a link, then the client goes into Simple Practice and creates their own username and password. They put all their information in there, and I don't even know their financial information. That's all encrypted for them. I don't even see that, which I don't want to see. I just have whatever information I need so that I can keep record of our sessions. You can do all your billing there. You can create invoices and send invoices to people. A lot of the really good management systems have treatment planning involved too. You can create treatment plans based on whatever templates that they have. Sometimes they're charging. I've noticed that like Simple Practice started doing this. They charge more. They charge a little extra for the treatment planning if you want to use it. So you got to add that sometimes. The other thing they started doing is adding an extra cost for telehealth, which I think is ludicrous because I can get 3 other different platforms that are totally free to me to use for telehealth. So it's really stupid on their end. To me, it's a bad business decision, but whatever. I'm not in charge of their business. Telehealth is it's kind of the new thing that a lot of really good software systems are adding to their platforms now, because it's just something that we're all using. So those are kind of the main things. There's other things that they do, but those are kind of the big heavy hitter administrative things that they do. These are some of the ones that I've found that are probably that I've either heard something about, or I know other people have used them. Like I used to use Therapy Notes, but we got away from that because it was like kind of old and clunky. I think it's a little better now. My Clients Plus is probably the cheapest of all of them. Doesn't have quite the firepower as some of the other ones, but it's a good one. Yeah, there's some Google Suites stuff now too that are really good. You can get on the business side that you can pay a little bit for and use a lot of Google products. If you like those, you can do that too. I didn't include that here, but Google, and eventually Google is going to get in this game and probably going to buy one of these or something and take over something. I mean, that's kind of how they work. But Theranest is one that I had not heard of, and I had a couple of colleagues talk about it, and they actually have a couple of good things. Like they include the virtual visits with the subscription, which is nice. And they have a couple of assessments that I like. The GAD-7, which is a 7-question general anxiety disorder questionnaire assessment, and the PHQ-9, which is the same thing for depression. So it's only 9 questions. So it's a quick. I like it because if you want to give that every single time, you can. It's a quick, takes like 2 minutes to answer, and you can start charting and graphing people's progress that way. I actually like those. Simple Practice does not offer those type, like smaller, quicker assessments. Usually they're a little bit longer, but they do. All of these will offer some kind of assessment forms as well electronically that you can use. I use Simple Practice. Simple Practice has become kind of a powerhouse in this area. I just listed a few. There's other ones too. There's other ones you can find. These are just some of the ones that are that I know about. You're either going to pay $25 or $100 a month, depending on what you're using. And that $100 a month usually is for a group. Like if it's a big practice and the practice might pay like $100 and X amount of therapists can use it, that kind of thing. One of the things that you want to think about too, if you use any of these, if you start your practice and you're like, hey, I need some admin help, even if it's like 10 hours a week, not all of these will allow for one administrative person to use it free with the subscription. So that's something to keep in mind too. Simple Practice does. You can have one person that will be able to go and look at everybody's stuff, which is nice to have. The other thing that you might want to think about is like Simple Practice, Therapy Notes. I think my clients, those 3 for sure, have messaging that you can do between you and the client, which is HIPAA compliant. So it's basically a messaging service that you use that you can send them messages and they can send you messages. Instead of email or text, you can do it that way. So that's another thing to kind of think about. Probably in the next 2 to 5 years, some other one will come along and be bigger and better, and there'll be something new. And then, that's just kind of what happens. When I first started, I had never even heard of Simple Practice. We just kind of stumbled upon it like 5 years ago. And now I would say it's like pretty much taken over this area. It won't be long. Something else will come along. I mean, there's always something new that comes along that's, hey, I'm better than this, and this is why, kind of thing. So they're just really good at marketing themselves. This stuff, these things you might start using immediately, like at your current practice. You might use some of these now. Where you're going to be, you might use some of these. Or if you're at a practice or going to a practice or an agency or a big clinic, they all have their own way of organizing and doing admin for all the client information. It's basically like, how do we store and use and but like assess, clients, and how do we get their information and what do we do with it and how do we use it? And so it's all about storing data. So in healthcare right now in general, data storage and data analytics is like gargantuan huge right now in the healthcare world, just in general. And mental health is no different. And so how do we store data safely, right? How do we do it safely? How do we do it in a HIPAA compliant way? And how can we do it so that we can retrieve it the easiest way we can? And so that's why I say some company will come along and do that better. That's typically what that means. Better, faster, stronger, more room. That's kind of what that means. But data right now it's like currency in healthcare. Data's big. So that's just something to think about. So basically every clinic, agency has some way to store and assess their data. All of them do. I worked at the practice. Well, it was technically in the psychiatry department, but we had a contract with the Bureau of Prisons, and I did employee assistance work. We all used the same database this was back in 2010 to 2013. So we all use the same database that the director of the program basically developed on his own. But we would also be able to do research projects from it. So we would collect data. We could do studies if we wanted to. Like we would be able to collect it and use it for studies. And we had like, thousands of pieces of data that we could use. So that's the other thing that a lot of places have at their fingertips. And that's really good because research really helps us understand how to help folks quicker and better and more effectively. So if anybody here's research inclined, that's a whole other direction to go. And that's the more you understand about how research works and how to use it and how to make it work for you, the more effective you can be as a clinician. At least that's kind of my viewpoint of it. So, okay. Any questions about this? This is all pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of rocket science here. Most of these systems are very user friendly too. The good thing about Simple Practice is you can't call them on the phone. They don't have phone. They don't have people talking to you. You just send messages, which is kind of weird, and they email and stuff, which I'm like, that's kind of weird, but that's just how they do it. All right, I want to hang on a second. I'm going to look at. All right, we are going to do some group. We're going to do a quick kind of group activity. Go. Danielle's talking about console. Tell me about console, Danielle, if you don't mind.
It's kind of similar to the when you were describing earlier. Is it Simple Practice?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to that. In that there's billing section, there's a way to add your own clients and schedule clients basically on your own. So basically, yeah, it's pretty much similar to that. I mean, it's really convenient. You can create your own availability as well.
Yeah.
Whenever you like write your progress notes, do treatment plans, all that, it's all in there. So they have like their own format. They have like a DSM format for everything as well, or DSM progress notes and stuff like that. They got all sorts of stuff in there. So yeah, it's really nice. It's all there in that one I guess system that they have or software. And so it's really convenient because I don't have to go looking for like different formats for like a treatment plan or whatnot. I just it's just really convenient.
Did they have an app?
I
like for an OS app, or is it maybe even a web-based application? Sometimes it's web-based. In other words, you have to use Safari on your phone or Firefox on your phone versus having an app. Do they have that? Do you know?
I don't think that it is. I don't think that they have an app, at least not that I know of. Yeah, because you just log into like you go online, you just I guess would go to console. But yeah, so I honestly don't know. That's a good question.
Well, and your agency might not want you to have the app. That's also possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the other thing about some of these programs. They might have what we see, like on our phones, we see applications, which is great. But then there's web-based applications, which is basically like you have to log into it every time, basically like being on the web, but you do it on your phone. So there's a little bit of difference there in speed and use. So those are just nuances. So that's cool. Yeah. So you like console?
I really do. Yeah. And it helps like keep everything just together. I don't know how else to describe it. It's really, I think it's user friendly. There is no option for like Zoom or doing any type of like video or phone conferencing or counseling or anything like that. So you have to use other sources. Like I use doxy.me. I don't know if
that's what I use too.
Yeah, I use that. And that's really convenient as well. I know during like the start of COVID, a lot of people mentioned like because of how much people were using it, like it was more difficult for clients to hop on and stuff, and it was a nightmare.
Oh, it was horrible. Yeah, it still gets glitchy sometimes. I use Zoom as a backup, but yeah, that's what I use because it's free.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's great. They have a professional version that you can do some kind of cool things with, but I did it for a little while and I was like, well, I'm getting the same glitchy session that I was before, so I just got rid of it. But yeah, I use DoxyMe as well. Yeah, good. Okay, I'm going to put you guys in the breakout rooms, and I'm going to let you guys find out all you can about telehealth on the actual statutes and rules page of BHEC. So I've put it in the chat. The link is in the chat. And so what I want you to do, specifically look for whatever regulations, rules, statutes you can find out for. I think everyone here's LPC, right? Do we have any LMFTs? I don't think so. Is there everybody here is there any LMFTs on this call right now? I don't think there is. Just from what I can remember.
It's
So
just
you guys,
you.
yeah, just me. So don't worry about the LMFT side. So that link I gave you is like the big long, it's all the statutes for everybody, psychologists, social workers, they do one big old long thing. I want you to look specifically for rules and statutes for LPCs and LPC associates for telehealth. So there'll be a section and it'll say something about telemedicine or telehealth in there. So I'm going to put you guys into groups and I'm going to let you guys get after that.
Is anyone else having trouble loading the site for BHEC, or is it just me?
I'm having the same issue.
Yeah, me
Is
too.
it down?
Me too.
Yeah, me too. Hang on.
Site cannot be reached.
Hang on, people. You know, they're moving offices right now, and they said there might be yeah, it's down. All right, hang on a second. Let me do something else here. We can backdoor this sucker. Let me find my okay. I don't know why this is, but they sent an email last week or the beginning of this week saying we're moving offices. And for some reason, they were saying that their site would be down, which I was like, that doesn't have anything to do with your offices, but apparently it does. Because I'm getting the main BHEC to come up, but I'm not getting anything else to come up. Yeah, it's not coming up. That website does work. That is the way to get to the latest rule. I mean, you can always get there from the main BHEC site. They'll always list all the statutes and rules and everything. So here's what I want you to do instead. Instead of going there, you can start Googling some of these things and you can look at it. You want to look at Texas and you want to look at whatever requirements are. So it's basically the training requirements. Are there continuing education requirements? Is there a HIPAA component to it? I just want you guys to kind of start looking for some of those things. Also, when you're in the breakout rooms, just in general, like just start. I would love it if you guys just kind of talk about, hey, you know, let me do this. I think I would do telehealth, or I've done it and I don't like it, or I'd love to kind of hear what you guys think about that too. So I'm going to put you in the rooms. Let me get you around over here. And I'm going to jump in and out of rooms too. All right. So you should see something on your screen. You just click and join. Okie dokie. Some people are talking to the bitter end. I love watching all the rooms close because I know someone's in mid sentence and it just shuts you out. It's like
Yes.
locked down. So I teach classes on Saturdays, and I have in my lifespan class I usually have like 40 people in there, and I'll do breakout rooms, and then I'll have like whatever 8 breakout rooms or whatever it is, and I jump in like I just jumped in and out of y'all's, and I jump in and out, and just sometimes ask questions. Sometimes I just jump in there and just listen. I'm not really trying to do anything, but sometimes it freaks people out. I don't know why, but it does. So then that makes me want to do it more because I want to make them, I'm just trying to be mean. Anyway, okay. So did anybody discover anything, or did you guys mostly just talk about if you would do telehealth or not? Because it doesn't matter to me one way or another. I'm assuming most of all, if not all of you, have done telehealth at some point. I'm assuming, but maybe not.
Yeah, we talked about both. We did some Googling and found some links. I don't know if the links like have the information we're looking for, but they seem useful.
Yeah. That's the thing about it. What that link that and it's on the link is on the PowerPoint slides too, so you can go back to it. I'm not sure why it's not active. Their site's not active right now, so apparently just disengages when you move offices. I don't know. It's kind of weird, but You can go on there and check it out. And I think I mentioned this before. If you can sign up for all of their emails, and when they do emails, they'll send out like if there's rules changes or when their next meeting is and things like that, and they'll send you updates and things like that. Those are always good to be on, just so you kind of stay abreast of the things that are happening in the field. So, does anybody here feel like, man, I did telehealth and I'm like, I don't like it. I don't want to do that. That's not what I want to do. Anybody feel that way? I'm just curious.
I think it just depends to like age groups. You know, I've done telehealth. I've got actually a group of adolescents that I've not a group, but two adolescents that I've been seeing now for my practicum. You know, and I mean, it's been really, I guess it's really important, like setting those expectations, like, you know, hey, just got to be where I can see you the whole time. But, you know, I think sometimes there are some like 10-year-olds who are fine with it. And like, then you get some kiddos who it's like, nope, you know, and really feel like you need to see in person. So
Right.
I think
Yeah.
age is kind of a factor in just developmental level.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say also for me with the telehealth, it just sometimes if trying to do it full time, it just sometimes a cancellation. You know, if you do it full time, you don't get paid. You know, it's like my only downfall kind of about it.
Yeah.
You know, everything else seems to be good. It's flexible, make it time. It's just the cancellation and what you get paid depending on what, you know, if you're in the insurance panel.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if they don't show up, you don't get.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just, that's it. Yeah. Yeah, good point. There's some, I mean, there's pros and cons to all of it, and it's probably a lot of it's preference. Probably a lot of it is probably context. If you know, it's if you want to work with doing work with families like that might be a little bit challenging versus working with an individual kind of thing. I'm the kind of crazy person. I do all mine's telehealth. I do everything virtual, and I work with couples, and it's super interesting. And I had a little bit of learning curve to do that, but I like it. But I kind of had to during COVID just because I was like, well, I was losing my practice right in front of my face, so I had to do something. So I just decided to go all in telehealth. So, and then I've just kind of kept it that way ever since. And so I know some practices are, you know, did that and then jump back to in person as quick as they can. It's really a preference kind of thing. The point about it is that there's now rules and regulations and statutes that we have to follow. Believe it or not, it wasn't super long ago. I want to say as late as 2015 or 16, I was doing telephone calls with people even in another state. And there wasn't a ton of rules at that point. And then they started regulating a lot of the things. And now each state also has different rules and regulations. For example, I'm licensed in Texas, so I can only work with people in Texas. Technically, I could be in another state as long as they were in Texas. I could have that session technically, but even that language in the code book is really gray. So technically, you're supposed to get the permission of the state you're going to be staying in and make sure that they're okay with it. But then they tell you they're fine with it as long as your state is. And so it's kind of like one of those things back and forth. So that's why I'm getting certified or getting licensed in multiple states, so I can see people in different places. There are some states right now with super high demand. One of those is California, one's Arizona, one's Washington, Florida, Illinois, not Illinois. I think it's Colorado's the other one. They're just kind of like hot, and those probably shift and change, but they all have different licensing processes. So you kind of have to jump through different hoops to do it. Okay, so best practices. I think Oscar was asking this question in the group I was in terms of like HIPAA compliant platforms. That that was kind of loosened during COVID. That's going to come back online where you have to use HIPAA compliant platforms. Danielle was mentioning Doxy.me. That's what I use too. That's HIPAA compliant. There's other ones out there that are HIPAA compliant. Confidentiality is very important, obviously. Making sure that the clients know that. When you do meet with people, I'm sorry guys, I had a long day. When you do meet with people, every time you have to get their name, date of birth, address to make sure they are in the place they say they are. Make sure they're in the state they're supposed to be when you meet with them. And you always want some type of callback number if you get disconnected or something happens, especially if there's an emergency and you need to get a hold of someone quickly. The one thing that is interesting in terms of confidentiality is that I've had multiple clients multiple times try to meet me at like in a restaurant, like they're in a restaurant and we're going to have a session. I'm like, well, that's not really confidential, so we're not going to do that, right? So we need to have a space that's confidential for them. And sometimes they'll try to, like I had a client, this wasn't that long ago, where at first the video was a little bit like glitchy, and I could hear just fine, and they could hear me just fine, but I couldn't see them very well. And it kind of cleared up after a few minutes, and I realized that they were in a taco cabana, like sitting in a booth with people all around them, and they were eating. And I was like, okay, well, this is not gonna. And they no headphones, nothing, right? It's just like, hey, what's up? We're having a phone call with my therapist. So had to stop that session and be like, hey, we need to find a better place to do this. So the confidentiality is not just like for you. Like I'm in my office, right? Like you can see there's no windows behind me. I don't have windows anywhere my camera can see. Everything points to me. There's nothing that would give away like who I'm meeting with or anything. Same for the client. There needs to be confidentiality for them to meet as well. When I meet with couples, the 100% of all the couples I meet with already like virtual sessions for two reasons. One, they don't have to get babysitting, they don't have to drive anywhere, and they can do it in their room, like if they want, or separate rooms. They can even be in separate rooms if they want to be and meet. And they really like that aspect because once they're done, they get off and they just kind of go about their day, and they really like that. There are contraindications for using telehealth. If there's serious mental illness, like someone needs hospitalization, or if someone maybe even needs an IOP service, or someone is in an active addiction, that's not the best time to use telehealth. You want to get in person, or a treatment facility of some kind. If there's suicidal ideation, that's not the best time to do virtual treatment. Obviously, you would work with them that session, and then you would take steps to get them help that they needed. You would get other people involved. And sometimes people can't meet because they can't find a secure location. Like, hey, I can only meet, like for me, my schedule is fairly limited. Like I can only meet when I have an opening, it's for a certain amount of, like certain time of day. If during that time of day a new client can't meet, then maybe that's not a good fit, right? They maybe need to go either find another in-person place or virtual place or whatever. The other thing that's happened to me since I moved to a small town is that I've had people contact me in the town that want to have services with me, and I tell them I don't meet with people in the town that I live in because I don't want to run into you, and I don't want my family to run into you. More importantly, because I would rather you just be neighbors and not my client. So that's another thing to think about too. And I've got other colleagues that have moved during COVID, like to small towns. Like I got a couple of friends that like moved back home to smaller towns, like where they grew up, and they kept their practice and everything. And people in their town, we talk about it. So people in their town sometimes want to, like they'll find their name on Psychology Today, and they'll call them up, and you're like, hey, I know you live around the corner. I'm sorry, we can't. That's not going to work. So there's certain complicating factors sometimes that you just have to be aware of that just don't work with virtual sessions. But there's plenty of people to refer to. So one of the things that I encourage people, whether you do virtual sessions or in-person sessions, and we talked about this last time we met, start building your own directory of referrals. Like just get some good referral sources together. That's really helpful. Like right now, when I stopped using Blue Cross Blue Shield, I had a pretty large number of clients that did want to do the self-pay rate, which is I totally understand. And I gave them 60 days notice too, and I gave them a sheet of referrals, and I try to help them kind of find people and things like that. So having those referrals can be super, super important. And there's always different types of clients that you're going to work with that you might not feel super competent working with. Like I don't work with eating disorders or self-harm. Probably could, but I know other people that are really good at it. And so I'm more likely to try to refer them. Now I will, if they have a session schedule and we're working through something, I'm not going to like dump them and never see them again. I'll work with them until I can get them referred to someplace. So there could be special things like that I just know people that are really good at certain things. And if I'm not good at it, I'm going to try to put them with someone that I know is good at it, because I'm good at certain things. And that's what people will refer to me to. I got a referral last week from a therapist that I feel this feels horrible, but I don't even know this person. Like, I don't even know how they know about me. And I looked them up and I'm like, I don't even know this. Like, who is, like, I feel like they might've just found me on a site somewhere and said I was good or something, but I don't think I know them. But you want to try to vet the people on your referral list too, to make sure that they, that they're good and they can work with people well. So anyway, having said all that, do you guys have any questions about anything we talked about tonight, or any questions about anything, even about life? We can talk about, anything. Or are you tired and just ready to be done and go to bed and call it a night? We can do that too.
I have a question about referrals, because I know, this semester is coming to an end pretty quickly. So when we're referring or doing referrals with our clients, do we actually like hand them, I know this is like really pedantic, but do we actually like hand them a sheet of referrals? Like, how do you typically go over the referrals with them? Like, do you go into detail, like who it is, like what they do, like just what do you do?
Now, so first of all, the site that you're at might have a procedure that they use, and I would follow that first. That would be the first thing, because they probably used to having in practicum students. That would be number one. Second thing is, yeah, you can give people a sheet and say, hey, here's a group of people. Here's people that focus in these areas, and here's people that focus in these areas, and let them kind of call around and kind of leave that up to them. You don't necessarily have to point out people or, be super specific about every single thing. But you can also direct them to, like, I direct a lot of people to Psychology Today, which is a really good search engine, because you can get super specific and filter out the things you're not looking for and keep the things you are looking for. And that's a really good website to me to help people too. But in terms of referrals, the general idea is that you don't want to just leave them hanging, right? You don't want to just be like, come in one day and be like, oh, by the way, this is our last session. That's the key of it. You want to give them enough heads up to know, hey, I'm going to be leaving like X day, or I'm going to be transitioning out X day. Let's start talking about a transition plan, and let's put a transition plan in place. Some clients might choose to just end therapy altogether, and that's fine. Some clients might decide, hey, yeah, I want some referrals, and I'm looking for someone that can do XYZ thing. And then you can say, hey, here's some folks to call. Here's a few numbers you can try. And there have been times where a practicum student gets another job in another place, and the client follows them there. That happens too. You can't stop a client necessarily. You know, a client can do whatever they want. They can go wherever they want. Now it depends on this. Now this goes back to your site. Some sites might frown on things like that, and you might want to be careful, but some sites don't. So you probably want to check with your site in terms of like whatever procedures they might have. Basically, we're trying not to just dump our clients and like ghost them. You know, we're trying to make sure that that they're taken care of until you can transition them. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yeah, it does. And I was looking up like over the week, like rules and regulations on like abandonment, and
Yeah.
just reading all of it started freaking me out. And I was like, oh, I want to make sure I'm not like abandoning my client, but I know that I can't hold their hand the whole way until they find like a new
Yeah.
therapist. I mean, not always, like in some cases I understand you have to, but I just wasn't sure, like, I guess insofar like how we have to, what it looks like to just generally refer someone.
Yeah, it's technically it's like make a good faith effort basically to make sure you can transition them. And that doesn't mean like sometimes emergencies happen where you have to say, hey, we're gonna have to stop. I'm so sorry or whatever. But in y'all's cases, you if you kind of know the day that you're gonna be transitioning out, you can go ahead and start telling them and use and kind of develop a transition plan with them so that you're not abandoning them. Because you know, you really, like you said, you want to be careful with them and make sure you're handing them off to someone. Make sure that if they want to continue care that they can, because it's really still their option.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions?
Kind of to piggyback off of what Danielle just said in terms of, I guess, kind of on that opposite end. Let's say that we are planning on staying at our practicum site and continuing with seeing our clients. I know that Dr. Johnson had mentioned, you know, because obviously due to like legalities and insurance and not being fully licensed, you know, not being fully licensed as an associate quite yet, that there is an option to enroll in another, it's not though, he said extra practicum.
The
course?
extended practicum.
Extended practicum. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So would we talk to you closer to that time about that, or
You can. We have
Okay.
3 in that this time.
okay.
Ken, that's been in our class, the in-person class, Ken Towns is in that extended practicum right now because he stayed. Because basically, people that want to kind of stay and keep seeing clients, even though you can't count the hours, you've technically graduated, you can't count the hours. Some people want to stay and see their clients because they want to keep that site, let's say, when they get their license, right? So they want to take the exam and then kind of do the paperwork and all that stuff. So it kind of gives you that extra 10 weeks right at the site
Okay.
that you can stay there. So what you would do is you would do that extended practicum. It's just signing up for an extra course. And I actually teach it, and it's super hands off because I'll talk to the students once or twice because I'm just there for emergencies basically.
Okay.
Right. And support, because you still have supervision just like you would. You're still technically not really a student, but you're not really an associate. Like he said, you're in this
like limbo. Yeah.
you're in this in between, but it's just another practicum to allow you to stay at the site.
Okay.
That's all
Perfect.
it is. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? All right. Next time we meet, it's going to be the 21st via Zoom. Yeah, 2 weeks. It'll be July 21st via Zoom. Probably be the same link. I'll put it out again, but it'll probably be the same link. I was trying to get my CPA buddy to come. He's on vacation. I don't know why he's on vacation, like in Idaho, having fun with where the temperature's like 50. I was like, well, forget you. I don't want you to join us. We don't want you. So I think I said this last time. I was kind of hopeful I could get him. I'm going to put his recording from last semester up so you can see it. I'll throw that up there. I should be able to throw that up there tomorrow. I'll put that on my list before I jump off. I'll put that up tomorrow so you can watch it. It's a full 2 hours. It's really, really good. He does a great job of explaining like tax implications, salary, all kinds of different things. I think it was probably last semester's students' favorite class, I would say, of everything we did, because it's just really practical too. Chris is just a really good guy. He's really helpful. So having said that, I think you guys should go do something else and go eat dinner or go to bed or whatever. I don't know, whatever you want to do.
Real quick question, Dr. Bedard.
Yeah.
Our paperwork do we start gathering the information now from our supervisors and turning stuff in, even though we may not be done with our hours, or when will be a good time to start getting the paperwork to you?
Yeah, I would just do it as soon as you want to. I technically need all paperwork by the 18th, right? Is that when the last, is it the 18th at the last day? Is that a Thursday?
Yes.
Technically, everything's due by August 18th, but you guys can turn in any assignment, any paperwork, anytime between now and then. Some people, I've got some already from people. So if you want to get those evaluations done already, you can. You know, if you're done with your hours, like I know some people are done with their hours, you can go ahead and turn that stuff in too. You can turn anything that's finished, you can go ahead and turn it in, but I have to have it by August 18th. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that? I realize that my lackadaisical dates really freak out some people. I get it. Your drop dead date is August 18th. You basically can turn things in anytime between now and then. Okay. All right. If you have questions, you can stay around. If you don't, you can jump off. You're free to go. So I'll stick here if anybody has any questions, and I'll see you guys on the 21st.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for you, Dr. Bedard.
Yeah, for sure.
So my husband and I have considered moving to Ecuador. And I'm actually really interested in doing like what you're doing. So with telehealth, like, I don't know if you've ever heard of that before, like if you have friends, like other, know other therapists that have moved outside of the States and are doing telehealth or working even for an American company, organization or whatnot,
Yeah.
counseling site that can do that.
Yeah. So international stuff. I know it happens. I mean, technically, here's what I would do. I would look into whatever rules and regulations they have in Ecuador, or whatever. And I don't know enough about Ecuador to know if it's divided into like states or city groups or whatever. Like I know if you're like the Dominican Republic, just because I've been there, they have like areas almost like parishes that they divide their whole country into. And so Ecuador might have something like that, or there's just one rule and you do whatever you want, kind of thing. I do feel like, do you know what the time zone is in Ecuador by any chance?
I don't know. That's a good question.
It's not-
I
it
don't
shouldn't
think it's
be-
that much.
No, it
Yeah.
shouldn't be that. It's almost directly south, Central America, right?
Mhm. It might just be an hour or two difference either way. Yeah.
The thing you might think about is like getting your license and go ahead and getting your license in Texas.
Mhm.
I'm fairly certain you could still see clients in Texas, even if you're in Ecuador. I think that's something you definitely want to check with the board about for sure.
Mhm.
Ecuador is the same time as us, just so you know. It's
Yeah,
Central time.
That's kind of what I thought. So you
thank
can,
you.
like, if you wanted to get, I'm just throwing this out, you want to get licensed in states in the Central time zone, right? Like you could do,
Mhm.
so that you're like on the same time zone. I mean, if I'm being honest, if I could have a dream,
Mhm.
I would like live internationally and keep my license in America and be like, see clients. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. That's kind of
just
my dream right
great.
now. And yeah, my husband's been on a few mission trips up
Mhm.
there, and he is in love with that area. And
Yeah.
I yeah, I would love to go up there too. So we were like, let's dream a little bit. Let's
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
talk about it. So
Yeah, I mean, I do know people do work internationally, and there's companies now that are hiring American therapists that do international therapy, like therapy with people in other countries while they're
Mhm.
in America. So that happens too.
Mhm.
I just don't know enough about the international, like if there's different rules for that. I feel like it's gray enough that you probably could get away with seeing people from, like if you're in Ecuador, that you could get away with seeing people in Texas, but you definitely want to check with the board about it.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's what I would say. And probably as you're fully licensed, it's probably easier to do. That's what I would think. But I had a colleague I went to my master's degree with. They went on a mission trip they went as missionaries to where'd they go? I feel like Argentina, but that could be wrong. And I think she still got her license in Texas. So I know it can happen. So that's a great question. I wish I knew the answer to it. Tell me what you find out though.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
I might just stick around also just to hear other students talk.
Yeah. Yeah, Jared, you have a question?
Oh no, man! I was just gonna say, I apologize for the confusion on the Zoom classes. I was emailing you about. I had missed the last one because the last in person because my flight got delayed coming back from a business trip, and it was like $25 to get internet on the
Oh,
the plane,
yeah,
and I was
that's
like,
not worth
man, I
it.
don't want to pay it. So
No, that's not worth it. No, don't worry about it. No problem. It's no problem. I didn't realize my email address was wrong in the syllabus. No one caught it, including me. So that was a goofy thing. And then I had to go and check with all the other classes. I think there was a T in it or something that threw it off. So because I had people's emails not coming through. So that was goofy too.
Oh, weird. I had yours saved in there from when I had you in assessment. So
Yeah,
it was all good. I was able to
yeah. Okay. Yeah, don't worry about that. That's why I record them.
No, I appreciate you recording. That was I watched it the other day. It was